Newcomb is the real Adirondacks. It's not only right geographically in the center of the Adirondacks, but it's surrounded by the high peaks, has tremendous scenery, lots of lakes.
It's interesting. I think when you move into a community and you begin to work with and meet with individuals who are engaged in a variety of different projects, and you start talking about those things, and you wind up finding yourself being active in far more than you anticipated, and it's actually really rewarding and quite a lot of fun.
Your neighbor is your friend, and you know, a lot of times you don't even lock your door. So it's just a good, quiet, easygoing life. For the most part, the group that we're here are willing to listen to outside thought. You know, you do get into a cocoon here a little bit, and you kind of get set in your ways, and it's always good to hear that other voice.
We had a high loss of employment when the National Lead Mine closed in 1989, and we needed to look at what was going to positively impact town after all of the mine employees and their families left town. That kind of a shift in the population of school-age children was reflected obviously in the age of young families. They had to move out for lack of employment opportunities.
Up until the mid-'80s, the town of Newcomb existed on mining and lumbering. But the mining petered out, as mining has a tendency to do, and the fact that loggers, where there used to be an 8-man crew, now they do it with a great big cutter, and it doesn't provide the employment that it did. I looked at the comprehensive plan that had been done by the town in the late 1980s and realized that was the most current comprehensive plan we had. A lot had changed in the 15 to 17 years in the meantime, and so I met with George Cannon, the supervisor. George and I discussed it, and he supported the idea that we needed to update the comprehensive plan. We knew we needed to try and do things to bring businesses to town to keep the town viable over the long term. But we didn't really know how to go about doing it.
Many communities in the Adirondack Park between the 70s and 80s and into the 90s had to look at how they were going to transition from a resource-based economy into a recreation-based economy.
You know, every town has something that's worth marketing. Identifying those resources is important as part of any planning process. That's exactly what you're trying to capture in a plan, and then identify for people who want to live, work, and play in any given community. Planning process is about engaging stakeholders, holding community events, and finding out and discovering what are those important assets in a community. And then the plan itself is figuring out how you can leverage those assets, how do you need to improve those assets, and if there's something missing in a community that's desirable, how can you best go about getting funding for that and implementing those things.
When you think about what there is to do, you literally fall out the back door to go hiking, to go mountain biking, to go snowshoeing, to go swimming. There's an incredible youth program that the town sponsors.
So there's an axiom in planning that people support the plans that they themselves write. So the key to any good plan is a pretty robust public outreach effort. And we did a lot of that in Newcomb. Our committee helped us identify key stakeholders, people who maybe have a leadership role in the community.
We had a very large number of people, close to 100 that attended the open hearings. 100 may not seem like much if you're from Manhattan, but if you're from Newcomb, where there's only about 440 people, it comes to almost 25% of the population attended those meetings.
One of the important elements in the planning process is making sure that you have consensus. And consensus doesn't necessarily mean unanimity. It doesn't mean that everybody agrees on every aspect of the process and how to move forward.
You're always going to have different sides and different opinions to anything that you put on the table. And I don't think there's any wrong answer. However, to have a posture of stagnation is one where you're moving backward. You're not staying in the same place. One of the critical factors that we face is we have an older town. And unless we are in a position to revitalize the population of the town, we will be in a place in the not too distant future that we don't want to be in.
The amount of people that are going to the region and the community to go hiking, kayaking, horseback riding, etc., visit the community and then don't quite realize that they're in the town of Newcomb, given its physical infrastructure. And so part of our job was trying to identify those assets and then let people who are enjoying those resources know that there's more to do in Newcomb and how best to get from place to place.
Our plan document wasn't just a series of goal statements or policy statements, as many plans are. Those are certainly important to setting land use policy, but here our problem wasn't managing growth. Our issues were really trying to figure out how to vitalize a community and pull some of these many strands we have in the community together.
The challenge with any comp plan process is getting things done at the end of the day, because every plan is trying to focus on how do we create some action out of all this. And Newcomb's been particularly successful in that they've received funding for a number of physical projects.
But coming out of the comprehensive plan, we developed a Route 28N corridor enhancement plan that would try and let people that had never been to the town before see the beauty of our main street.
Newcomb kind of exists as a string of uses along the highway that wasn't well connected and that wasn't well publicized.
Complete Streets is this philosophy that streets aren't just for vehicles, and it's a challenge in many communities in the Adirondacks and throughout New York State that are divided by their state highway, a Route 9 or a Route 28.
So the real product of this plan was a series of very specific recommendations for both physical activities and projects.
We were able to secure smart growth funding in order to execute a marketing plan.
And so what Newcomb has done is create a really creative and savvy marketing and branding initiative that is really working, whether it be website development, new brochures, ad placements in key magazines, outdoor-oriented, equestrian-oriented magazines.
It's important for communities to remember, as they're marketing themselves as a destination, that as people's choices have broadened, their free time has become more scarce. So it's become incredibly important to demonstrate a value and really live up to what you promise.
We spent a lot of time up in Newcomb for this project, getting to know the surroundings and the landscape. Our first step was determining what elements we needed to include. We immediately arrived at the Adirondack Mountains and the surrounding forest, which are ever present in Newcomb. The committee also wanted wildlife to be represented. They had used 3 deer in a previous mark, so we created our own take on those. Seemed like an obvious tie-in with existing visual elements around town, plus there are a lot of deer in Newcomb. We finished the mark with a vista of good no flow and included the tagline, Heart of the Park, which was another suggestion from the committee. We offered up 4 different color palettes representing the seasons: hues of blue for winter, saturated greens for spring, and warm colors in autumn.
Another element to consider as you're marketing your town is the idea of segmenting your audience. So say you have 4 or 5 different outdoor pursuits that you can promote. You don't want to promote them all at once or promote fishing to somebody who's interested in bird watching. Who are you talking to, and how do you deliver the truest message of your town to that audience? It's necessary to know where that audience is. How can you best deliver that message? Are they going to hear it through social media, through print advertising? Perhaps it's on the radio. These are things that you need to do in order to make sure that the money that you're investing and the time in your strategy connects with that audience. The message needs to match the placement, so consider where the ad is running. For a publication like Adirondack Sports and Fitness, we ran a mountain biking ad. In a national publication called Trail and Rider, we ran an ad geared toward equestrians.
Part of our marketing campaign was to go after that audience. We had a really great equestrian ad that ran in a national equestrian magazine, and they were so excited about who we were that they wound up writing a feature piece on the town of Newcomb.
That aspect of the marketing and branding piece are also visually connected to the physical improvements. So the whole idea is that what we're physically proposing and doing in Newcomb integrates with its marketing and branding, and therefore it has a unique user experience that's seamless, from opening the newspaper up and saying, hey, come to Newcomb, to going to Newcomb and getting to experience all these amenities and assets through the same wayfinding strategy that we see in both the branding strategy and the Complete Streets physical improvements.
The challenge is to break these things into pieces and components and tell a compelling story so that the funding organizations understand why this is important to the community and why these things are all related and somehow fit into a regional context.
The other thing Newcomb had going for it, I think, is an exceptionally smart and committed group of residents.
The whole project was a series of pieces, and seeing that all come together, the Bob Lillies of this world and the Paul Hayes and the Wes Migas, and because it's really a great support group for this project.
There's no one particular point at which you start and no one particular point that you finish. It's a continuum of effort.
Build a firm foundation for our town, to earmark a blueprint and have a guide in order to accomplish objectives for the future.
I'd say come on up, because we've got what you want and you can come see it, and you will take pictures and bring it home, and hopefully you'll want to come back.